Hi there, it's Karen. I'm bringing you a video today about the Fiskars circle fabric cutter. The fabric cutter comprises of two things. You've got the template here and you've also got the blade tool. Now the circle can cut from 12 inches, which is the biggest, down to 2 inches circle, which is the smallest. Now I say 12 to 2 inches, but actually they've got a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So any of you quilters or sewists, you know that no matter what circle you choose, you've always got the 1/4 inch seam allowance included. So that's the capacity for it. It's a really handy tool. This comes here, you can see, with all the markings laid out along the bottom, and I'll show you exactly how to use it. So what you're going to need is a piece of fabric. So I've got my piece of fabric here, and you have your fabric folded. Now I'll tell you about the semicircle now, so I'll get that bit out the way. If you wanted to cut a semicircle, you could of course just cut a fabric circle and then cut it in half, but your circle wouldn't have the 1/4 inch seam allowance on the bottom edge. So Fiskars have thought of that, and what you would do if you wanted to cut a semicircle would be to have the fabric as a single layer, not folded. And if you have a look at the bottom here, it says, if you can see it, half circle seam allowance. So you would put, if you can just about see those dashes there, you would line the bottom of your fabric up with the dash line. So you would line it up, I'll try and show you here, I know it's harder to see. You would line it up here, and then you would have your seam allowance on the bottom edge as well, but we're concentrating today on the circles. So we'll go back to our folded fabric. Yours of course would be beautifully ironed, not like mine, and apologies in advance for cutting into the bunnies, but this was the best fabric that I had to hand. So I've got my folded line. Try and line it up carefully so you know you've got a nice straight edge. The circle cutter template, if you see here, have got these little grip circles all around to help grip onto your fabric, and it's hard to see in this light, but if you have a look, you can see here two little lines here. They're little acrylic lips, which mean that when you're trying to butt your fabric up, it just helps put your fabric in the right place. So we'll flip it over and we're going to line it up the center of where we want our circle to be with the center of this cross here. So if I just pop that onto my fabric, you can just see I've just lined it up there. If I move it up very slightly, you'll be able to see here all of my numbers along the bottom. So I've got it lined up. We'll go to the tool. Okay, this is the blade. Fiskars have thought really well about safety. So when you take the top off, there's no exposed blade. If I angle it, when we press and start working with the tool, you can see that the blade is exposed there. And the handle is nice and easy to use, whether you use it from the top and press down or whether you use it like this. Any of you who've got dexterity issues or problems with pressure, you're going to love this tool, because when ladies tried it, when I've been at shows, and they've found it really comfortable to use. It's got two little lines either side. I'll try and show you there. A line there and a little line there, and those correspond to the notches on the bottom. Now these little notches here are the things that fit into the channels and stop the tool from sort of popping out when you're turning it around. So in order to find out which part you're going to line it up with, rather than having to look underneath to check whether your notches are in place, you just look at the little lines. So I'm going to choose a number. I think I'll choose 4 inch, and find this little line and just line it up with the number 4, and you're just going to twist it slightly and it will slot into place. When you've tried it a couple of times, you'll understand what I mean, but it's quite easy to fit. Sometimes when people have tried it, they've actually managed to angle it over to 2 different channels, but you'll find that when you try and move it, it doesn't fit into place. So just put it back in, give it a wiggle, and you'll know you have it in place, because if you move it, it will move quite freely and easily. Okay, so I'll pop it back in the 4. You can move it from left to right, right to left, but I'm left-hander, so I prefer doing it this way. Press the middle just to make sure that my template's still, my fabric is still. Just move it round. Okay, and that's it. If I want to create a frame rather than a solid circle, I'll just move it without having moved the template or the fabric, because you'll never line them up again. Move it up to 6 this time. Okay, pop it back in, check it's in the right channel, and just press and move it round. And if I take away my template now, you'll see that I have a perfect little circle and a frame. We open them out so you can see them. Now you might think, well, that's great, but you know, I can cut a circle out fine myself. Well, you probably can, but it's quite slow to cut out a really precise circle. And if you want to cut lots of them, it is a bit of a pain, but there are lots of things you can do with your circles, and I'll show you that in a minute. But before I go on to that, I just want to show you the tool, because once you've used it, I mean, I've used it quite a lot of times without having to change the blade, but you need to know how to change it. So all you need to do is take the top off, just unscrew it, line the notches together, and it pops out. Now you're going to dispose of this whole unit, and your new blades come like that, so you would just dispose of the old one in the new housing safely. To put the new one in, you just pop it back in, line these little notches up, and turn it till it faces, those two face together, the little orange circle, and then you just pop the top on and you're good to go. So you might be asking, well, what am I going to do? What's the point in having a circle cutter? If I just move these out the way, I'll show you some of the things that I have been making. You can do something like Suffolk puffs. These are really, really easy. They just require a circle of fabric. You put a running stitch around the edge, the outside of the circle. Let me get my circle here. So you put a running stitch all the way around the edge, pull up the threads so you'd end up with it bunching together in the middle like that. Flatten the fabric, and then you put a little button or some fabric or whatever you wanted. So you can make yo-yos, they're sometimes called, but you can see you can get a really pretty effect and really quick and simple with your circles. You might want to create a little cushion. This is using, excuse the fact it's not very ironed, this is using much more of a heavyweight fabric. This is on its way to being a cushion, but you can see that you can cut out something more than just a very basic thin lightweight cotton. I've actually cut out canvas with this tool, and it coped with that really, really well. Another thing you might want to do is some sort of home decor. This is a really cute, it's a bit like a cathedral window, and it would just make a lovely project for a children's nursery. Really cute little lions on there. I'll do another video on how to make that another time. But if you don't want to do lots of sewing, the other option you've got is something like these frames, but these are no sew, which I really like. And I've just put fusible interfacing, double-sided, ironed it on, and then cut the circles out, and it will cope with that really, really well. So those are a few ideas, but I've got to the point now with tools where I don't actually want them to just do one thing. I want my tools to be able to do more than just a simple circle. So while I was playing around when I've been demonstrating at the shows, I came up with another idea for you. So I'll use this piece of fabric that I've just cut out. Okay, now this time we're going to use the folded line at the top. Okay, so keep it as a semicircle, put the folded line and just center it onto your cutting mat. What I didn't say was the fact that you do need a self-healing mat underneath, otherwise you're going to mark your table. This is a Fiskars mat, which is a great quality. It's got all of the markings that you would need for your various sewing projects, but you will need something underneath that is self-healing. What I'm going to do, I've got that centered, so I'm going to pop my template on the top. Now I'm not going to be lining it up with the cross because I want it cut in a different place. I just need to put my template on centrally. Okay, make sure that's centered. Okay, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cutting out this little channel here, which happens to be the 5-inch channel. To get my tool, put the line in the 5-inch slot, rest it, make sure it's in the channel properly, press and cut. And what we now end up with is apple core, which are really handy because for those of you that cut apple cores, they are a bit of a pain, and if you've got a template you have to be slow and quite steady. There are die cutting fabric machines on the market with special fabric dies, which are great, but you are limited to the size you get in the die, whereas this, I could create an apple core, different sizes, up much, much bigger. As long as you remember what size circle you've cut, where you've positioned it and what channel, you can easily replicate that rather for a beautiful apple core quilt. The other two parts that you're left with are little petals. I say petals, they could be bunny ears, they could be leaves. You could start to do something really lovely, and for people who like applique, this is an absolute boon too. The other thing that I actually had a go at messing around with, if I can find the circle, if I show you this now, open my circle out, and then I'm going to fold, I'll turn it around this way, fold it in, which I'll use the centre line, be easier. Try and be a little bit precise with this. I'm going to fold them into themselves, and then I'm just going to fold it up like that. Okay, centre my shape again, so I get a nice even effect. Pop the template back over. Here you are. To be a little bit more careful with this because it wants to move. Okay, and then I'm just going to cut, there we go, one of these lines here, which happens to be number 5 again. Pop that over, cut it out, and then when I open it up, I have a sweet shape. So you can see there are lots and lots of different ideas, and I'm sure when you've got yours home and you start to play with it, you'll come up with some really creative ideas. I do really recommend this tool. I've used it an awful lot. It's quick, it's easy, and I'm sure you will love it if you get hold of it. I shall see you again soon. Take care. Bye.